Hello everybody, this is going to be my video on the Elemental Hellspawn Zane build that I've created just for you guys. We're going to get right into it. First thing to note is that this is a Hustler based Zane build. You can switch it out for other class mods such as the Seeing Dead or the Spy, but for best results with bossing and mobbing, the Hustler is probably going to be the way to go. I will list some examples where maybe the Hustler isn't the best because certain enemy types or bosses don't really like the way that the crit works with the Hustler, but we'll get into that later. The first thing that I wanted to note was just the Hustler though, because there are skills, mainly in the purple tree, but also in other trees, that work very well with the Hustler, and I will be mentioning that later in the video. So moving right along, we're just going to go through the purple tree real quick. First thing is Deja Vu, but really you can put it in any of these skills, so I would suggest either Mana Focus or Deja Vu or a mix of the two. Really these three skills up here are all kind of bad. None of them are super good, none of them are like horrible, but definitely I would suggest Deja Vu or Mana Focus. Moving right along, we want 5 out of 5 into Headman's Hand, we want 5 out of 5 into Commitment. Both of these are going to be super good. Commitment just got nerfed, it's still a good skill. You're getting like about 50% gun damage out of it with both stacks. Not a bad skill at all, plus you're getting like 50% cooldown rate, again not bad at all, totally worth 5 points. Headman's Hand, one of my favorite skills, it's just cool. Just gives you critical hit damage, it stacks twice, getting a little over 50% critical hit damage. Zane loves crit damage. Fugitive is obvious, put a point into there. You got the ability to get your violent momentum slash violent momentum slash violent speed damage up, and it's just a good skill to have as Zane. The one skill I have into Tunnel Vision, you can actually put anywhere in the tree that you want. It's just a point that will help us get down to our capstone later. Domino Effect, super important. This gives you crazy high fire rate, crazy good reload speed, all around getting critical hits, which we're going to be getting critical hits like 90% of the time. Eraser, probably the most important skill that Zane has right now, especially if you're doing a Hustler build. Eraser is super good, just like Boar from Borderlands 2. Then we go down to our man Flint. This is a really cool skill. It's honestly not as good as Eraser is, but it's still very good, very important that we get down here because it's going to give us a lot of damage, and it can help us actually proc our different forms of damage just based off the fact that it gives us our status effects automatically. So moving on to the blue tree, we have Violent Speed, Violent Momentum, you guys all know that. You can put points into either Cold Bore, or you can put points into Cool Hand. It's really up to you. I would suggest putting 2 or 3 points into Salvation. I like 3 because I feel like it maintains my health a little better, but really most people just put 2. It's really up to you. You can move that third point that I had there into Cool Hand, you can move it into Cold Bore, wherever. Seeing Red, this is a mainstay of Zane builds now. It meshes really well with the Mantis Cannon. Basically just gives you all your kill skills every time you shoot the Mantis Cannon, or technically when you put down your barrier, but more often than not it will be your Mantis Cannon. You want to split your points between playing dirty and violent violence here. You want to put probably 2 points into playing dirty. I've noticed when you put 1 point it doesn't really proc all the time, but as soon as you put 2 points into it, you're basically going to be having playing dirty 100% of the time. Violent violence, put as many here as you want. You could even move that third point that I had put in Salvation, you could put it into Violent Violence, just going to give you better fire rate. Good Misfortune, I put 3 out of 3. Most people put a lot less than that, they just put 1 or 2, but I like to put 3 out of 3 just to make sure that you're getting your action skill duration up. Death Falls Close, just going to bonus all of the different things that we just talked about. Almost all these are kill skills, so you're basically just getting 25% bonus for all those kill skills, plus 7 extra seconds of duration for each of those kill skills. Moving on to the orange tree, there is no orange tree, so we're going to move on to the green tree. And the green tree is kind of interesting because we really are just doing this to get to brain freeze, but also to get to the all-rounder. So you can split up your points between ready for action and hardy stock. It's really up to you. I usually just go straight for ready for action because really the amount of shield capacity you have, adding another 30% isn't that impactful, but adding 30% recharge rate and subtracting from your recharge delay, that can actually save you in a lot of situations. Brain freeze is one of the main abilities that you're going to be seeing the effects of in this build, and when you have the hustler on, you actually want to get as high of a bonus into brain freeze as possible. You can go all the way up to 10 out of 5. I'm 1 off from the perfect, so I have 4 out of 5. But that's perfectly fine. Even if you have less on your hustler, it's not that big of a deal. But basically this is just going to freeze your targets every time you hit a critical hit, and that includes when the hustler hits a critical hit, it counts. So you're going to be freezing enemies very quickly. You can put a point into distributed denial, or you cannot. It's really up to you. So just real quick, we're going to go over the fact that yes, you're going to use Mantis. For the Mantis, really you just want you want to use the Mantis, and you want to use Proliferation right here. It's going to give you an extra 2 charges. The other one that we're going to be using is going to be the Barrier, and really you just want All-Rounder, and then between these 2, Charge Relay and Nanites, it really doesn't matter. One final little note is that you want to remember that Eraser is going to proc off of all these critical hits, so you want to use guns that ricochet, because when you hit an enemy and it, like let's say that I'm using a doll gun, right? If I hit that enemy in the crit spot, it's going to go directly through them, and then if an enemy is directly behind them, then it would hit them and do that extra 100% damage. But with a gun like, let's say, the Recursion, if I hit someone in a crit and it bounces off, it will bounce off of them and then hit someone, and that gun automatically finds somebody, and it's a guaranteed hit on that second hit. So we will always be hitting with that Eraser shot. That also meshes really well with playing dirty, because that means that we're going to be firing 2 shots instead of 1, which means with like the Recursion shot, you're going to be hitting them and it's going to be doing basically twice as much damage, more or less. And that also meshes well with Brain Freeze, which freezes enemies on a critical hit. So all 3 of those skills mesh extremely well, and that segues directly into our actual gear. So first we're going to go over once again the Calm. So what's great about the Hustler is that it essentially gives you 5% chance for non-critical hits to score a critical hit, but this will stack up to 5 times. So let's say that you hit non-critical hits like 5 times in a row, then you would end up having a 25% chance to hit that next shot that isn't a critical hit as a critical hit. So like shot 1, if it hits them, it'll have a 5% chance to be a critical, even though it shouldn't have been, and then you hit them in the body again, and that one would be 10%, and then 15, and then 20, and then 25, and then it'll stay at 25 until you get that critical hit. It also gives you plus 25% critical hit damage, and that also stacks. So that 25% chance will stack with the non-crits. So it's kind of a weird system, but basically you'll be getting more damage for not hitting crits, but you'll also be getting fake crits at the same time, and those fake crits won't do as much damage as a real crit, but it'll still proc Brain Freeze, it'll still proc a lot of bonuses that you get for hitting crits, so it does a lot of those things still. It's kind of weird, kind of wonky, but that's the gist of it. That's what you need to know for the build. Now, guns that I love using for this build are guns like the Light Show that just have lots of pellets because they will instant freeze, and when you're using an Icebreaker, which I don't have equipped yet, but we will equip right now, when you're using an Icebreaker with this build, you will be instant freezing and you will be dealing tons and tons of damage because of that. Now on top of that, if you want to really go for maximum mobbing potential, then you can also get a death list like I've gotten. So I've gotten an Icebreaker death list. This means that every time that I hit someone, I'm freezing them and also dealing radiation, which means they're going to explode. It's a mess. I'll show you in the mobbing, which may or may not be in the background right now, depending on on if I edit in a little bit of combat in the background. We'll see. Another gun that I love using just because it has such a high DPS is the Chaos. It also explodes when you kill people. It can kill you a lot, but if you learn how to use it properly and use it in medium to long range as far as combat engagement distance, right, then you will do very well with this. It can kill bosses fairly well too, like Sumo for instance. I kill Sumo with this a lot just because it's something easy to use. It's really consistent. But now let's get to the bread and butter of this build, which is the recursion, the redistributor, and the root. Those three guns work so well with the Hustler that you can one-shot, I would say, probably at least 5 or 6 bosses without even having to have a build, basically, with the root or with the recursion. The root and the recursion specifically are super good, and I think I'll have in the background either a Grave Ward, Ruiner, or Herbivorous Kill in the background right now, just showing you the pure damage that it can put out. And the reason why is because depending on the hitbox of the boss, you can essentially hit them twice. Like, the first shot will ricochet off the boss, right? And because the boss has a second hitbox, or not a second hitbox, but it'll essentially just infinitely bounce off of the boss's hitbox, essentially one-shotting and insta-killing them. It's amazing, it's really fun to watch. So for mobbing situations where you feel very comfortable, I will suggest that you go for any shield that's going to give you a damage boost. So something like the Revolter, the Old God, etc. Those shields will do the best in easy mobbing situations. So areas like Athena's, areas like well, basically anywhere with Malawan except the Malawan takedown. Most animal encounters, the slaughter shafts, all those areas, to me at least, are easier areas where I can run this and feel comfortable. Maybe I'll go down once or twice, but the damage you're going to be getting out of this is going to be super high with the Icebreaker Deathless, with the Hustler, with a shield like the Revolter or the Old God, etc, etc. Those are the things you're going to want to be running for those encounters. If you're not in one of those encounters, then what you're going to want to do is, depending on the situation, you can either give up your Deathless and you can switch to, for instance, a Snowdrift Auto Idol, right? This is what I use when I'm going against Herbivorous. And what this allows is for me to be at full health and actually use my salvation skill points, which with the Deathless are essentially useless. But what this allows me to do is keep the damage from the Revolter or the Old God or etc, and still have a ton of survivability. So for bosses, that is generally what I will suggest, but it really depends on what you want to do with that. The other option that you have is to still run your Icebreaker Deathless or whichever Deathless or whichever Icebreaker, whichever Deathless basically, and you turn on a more tankier shield such as the Transformer, which I mentioned earlier. Sadly, I don't have one in my inventory at this moment. It's in my bank, just because I was messing around with stuff. But you put on the Transformer, and so for areas like the Malawan takedown, for me, that's where I just put on a Transformer because there's lots of shock going around, and all of a sudden you're basically invincible. You still have your Deathless, you're losing out on a little bit of damage from your Old God or Revolter, but really not that much damage, and you're still causing all these explosions, all this radiation damage, all this ridiculousness. I just want to go over a few things that I either forgot about from the main video or that I hadn't gotten yet. So we're gonna just kind of go with it. So basically, a few more things that I've figured out in the past 24 hours since I recorded the rest of this was that the Super Soldier Shield helps immensely with bossing, especially if you're going for max or like the fastest times possible with the root, because the root will often kill you. But with the Super Soldier, you're basically invincible. Okay, that if you don't want to run Deathless, one really good new alternative are the company men class mods, because you can totally run that and get good damage, especially for bossing. The best shield in the game for anyone similar to Tron. Wall. Yeah, so you can see that's pretty good. It's about the same as when I have my Deathless. Sometimes it's a little better just because it ends up giving me, with this specific one, ends up giving me a little bit more crit damage. So if I can hit more crits with it, it helps a little bit more. Also, the magazine size that's on it is actually pretty nice as well. I got like a God rolled one where it gives me 50% in both damage types. The only thing that could be better rolled on the Valdov Company Man for me is that instead of that accuracy, I could have gotten magazine size or something like that, but not that big of a deal. Since I got shock damage and magazine size in the lower category anyways, it's like super good. I'm super happy that I got that. But yeah, that kind of wraps up this little jaunt into some random ass stuff that I found when just playing around with all the new stuff that we got. So yeah, have a good one. Also, the 200% splash on the recursion is really good. It actually works. I didn't realize that. And yeah, that makes the build a lot better too if you can get the 200% splash damage. So see you later.